She was born without a name, no record, no midwife, no certificate, just a scream in the dark, in a room no one should have entered. Deep in the mountains of Appalachia, inside a rotting cabin carved into the hillside, a girl came into the world who was never meant to survive, and yet somehow she did. The mother had stopped speaking days before the birth. Some say it was the pain, others say it was because she recognized the child wasn't right, not from the moment she was conceived, but long before, because this child, this girl with twisted limbs and clouded eyes, was born from a bloodline that had folded in on itself too many times. Generations of brother and sister, father and daughter, mother and son, the kind of legacy that doesn't just deform the body, but eats away at the soul. She had no name, because there was no language left in that place, just breath and screams and silence. The locals whispered about the family in the hills, never by name. They had long since forgotten it. They just called them the Hollow Ones. Some claimed to have seen them, pale shadows stumbling through the fog, eyes too far apart, jaws too slack. Children with missing ears, mothers who looked like their own daughters. But the girl, she was something else, something worse. Because while most of them died young, malformed, mute, or lost to fever, this girl grew older. She learned to walk, to watch, to mimic. And as she grew, she didn't look less broken. She looked more aware, like something was inside her that knew. She was a product of inbreeding so deep and unrelenting that her DNA was barely distinct from her ancestors. Born not from love or accident, but from repetition, routine, ritual. They say when she was 7, she bit through a pig's throat clean, like a dog. When she was 10, she disappeared for 3 weeks and came back with her face covered in blood that wasn't hers. They locked her in the root cellar after that, not to punish her, but to protect themselves. And still, no one ever named her, because names carry power, and in that place, power was the last thing you wanted to give her. She never had a birthday, no cake, no candles. Time passed differently in that house, if it passed at all. Her father, who was also her uncle and possibly even her half-brother, marked time by the seasons. When the creek ran dry, when the hogs gave birth, when the snow buried the outhouse door, that was the rhythm of their world, and she moved through it like a ghost with flesh. No one came to the house unless they were desperate. Mail carriers learned to skip it. State officials got lost before they ever reached the tree line. There were rumors that the land itself was cursed, but the truth was worse. It was just abandoned, left behind by a country that didn't want to look too closely. Inside, the walls peeled and the air stank of mold and meat. Every corner of the house held some trace of rot, dried blood beneath the mattress, animal bones in the sink. The girl's hair was thick with lice, her gums bled when she smiled, and her voice, when it came, was almost inhuman. She'd speak in broken phrases, mimicking what she'd overheard, a man's voice when she was happy, a baby's voice when she was angry. No one ever taught her language. She stole it, like everything else. But there was something else inside her, something not born of deformity, but of memory. It wasn't just her features that were wrong. It was how she looked at people, with a recognition that didn't make sense, as if she had lived it all before, as if the sins of her bloodline hadn't just passed down into her body, but into her mind. Because this wasn't the first girl. There had been others. Old photographs buried in the attic showed children with the same eyes, the same misshapen fingers, generations apart, and yet nearly identical, all of them born into the same house, all of them unnamed. Some people say the family believed in keeping the blood pure. Others say they didn't believe anything at all, just that the hills were too quiet, the world too far, and the only warmth they knew came from the bodies closest to them. And when that's all you have, the line between love and survival dissolves, until there's nothing left but instinct, and instinct can create monsters. She wasn't an accident, she was a legacy. The first time someone from the outside laid eyes on her, they thought she was a feral boy. Thin, sun-leathered skin, limbs too long for her body, a crooked jaw that never fully closed. She stood behind a chicken coop, clutching a dead hen in both hands like it was treasure. When she looked up, her eyes didn't blink. The man, a lost hiker from Virginia, would later say it was like staring at something that wasn't fully human. Not animal either. Just wrong. She didn't speak. She didn't move. He backed away, slipped in the mud, and when he looked up again, she was gone. He told the sheriff, but they just shrugged. Said people see strange things in the woods. Said it was probably just one of the Creighton kids, a name that hadn't been used in those parts for over 30 years. The hiker pressed harder, so the sheriff drove him out there. 1 mile into the holler, the cruiser's engine died, just stopped. The sheriff wouldn't go further on foot. He turned the man around, told him he didn't want to poke around places where names don't matter. The hiker left, but the story didn't. It caught fire on local forums, online folklore channels, Reddit threads titled things like "The Appalachian Girl Without a Face," and under all the mockery and memes, there were patterns. Dozens of posts, all from different years, different usernames, different towns, but all describing the same girl, always in the woods, always silent, always watching. Some called her a cryptid, others said she was a changeling. But the truth is, she wasn't supernatural. She was the result of 100 years of isolation. No birth records, no schooling, no health care, just a family collapsing inward, hiding their shame beneath trees so thick sunlight barely broke through. And yet, through all that darkness, she survived. Not just physically, but consciously, aware, observant, more than the other. Her father died when she was 12, found with his face caved in like something hit him with a rock the size of a melon. No one claimed the body. Some say it was a bear. Others say she dragged him out behind the barn and waited 3 days for the blood to stop steaming. They buried him in the garden, not because they loved him, but because she wanted it that way. After he was gone, the house got quieter, but not safer. She stopped mimicking voices, stopped eating meat that wasn't raw, started scratching words into the floorboards, not English, not anything the locals recognized, just symbols, spirals, sharp lines, over and over, every plank a message no one could read. The 2 remaining relatives, her aunt and a cousin, both also her siblings in some way no one dared map out, locked themselves in the upstairs bedroom, nailed the door shut, left food outside in bowls, like feeding a stray dog. They didn't talk anymore, didn't scream, didn't argue, just waited. Until one night in late October, a fire lit up the hills. The barn burned first, then the coop, then the cellar. By morning, the house still stood, barely, but the upstairs was empty. No bodies, no screams, just ash. She was found standing in the yard, barefoot, hands covered in soot, eyes reflecting the flames like glass. When a neighbor finally approached, a man named Donnie Webb, known for trapping foxes and minding his own business, he said she looked at him like she'd been expecting him. She reached out and touched his chest, right over his heart, didn't say a word, just watched. Donnie never went back up that road, moved out of state the next week, didn't even sell his land, just left. Others followed. What was once a thin thread of civilization in the hills slowly unraveled. Mailboxes disappeared, driveways overgrown. The local school shut down when the last bus route got cancelled, unofficially because of budget cuts, but everyone knew it was fear, because the girl, the one with no name, started walking. Not far, just enough, a mile this way, 2 miles that, always at dusk, always barefoot. People began finding things on their porches, teeth, hair, dead birds, carefully arranged. Once, someone found a doll made of twine with its mouth sewn shut. No one ever saw her leave the offerings, but they knew. because every time they tried to leave something for her in return, food, clothes, even toys, it was torn apart, except for the mirror. One man left a small hand mirror, hoping she'd see herself and feel something. Guilt, maybe. Pity. Recognition. It was the only gift she ever took. Years passed. Or maybe it was only months. Time near her felt strange, thick, stretched and silent. People stopped counting. They just knew when she was near. She never grew tall, but her presence did. She walked with the quiet assurance of someone who'd never known rules, only ritual, the kind of ritual passed through touch and fear, not speech. Her bones remained fragile, her skin pale and papery, but her eyes, they aged. By the time she was 15, or close to it, she no longer resembled a child. Not in the way that mattered. There was something ancient in her posture, something ancestral in her gaze. A sorrow that didn't come from experience but from memory. Some folks said she remembered things she couldn't have lived, a kind of genetic haunting, the trauma of incest encoded so deep it began to whisper through her blood. A retired nurse, who once worked in state institutions, claimed to have seen her, just once, standing across the river, said the girl stared so long it made her cry, not from fear, but from something worse. Recognition. The nurse said, "That girl wasn't insane, she was aware. That's what scared me." Stories like that never made the news, but they passed through diners, hunting lodges, Sunday sermons, whispers in places where belief sits just beneath the surface. One night, a teenager, drunk and trying to impress a girl, drove his truck up the old path that led to her property. He honked the horn, shouted into the dark, "I ain't afraid of no inbred bitch." She didn't answer. But when he tried to leave, his truck wouldn't start. The engine turned, then died. Turned, then died. Over and over. The girl he was with said she saw movement. Low to the ground. Fast. Not running. Crawling. They walked 5 miles back to town in the dark. When the sheriff returned the next morning, the truck was covered in handprints. Small, filthy hand. D-prints. The boy stopped talking after that, dropped out of school, spent most days sitting on his porch with a shotgun. No charges were filed, no evidence was taken, because everyone already knew. This wasn't just a girl anymore. She was the final product of a bloodline forgotten by God. If you're still watching, you're already braver than most. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done if this was your bloodline? There's a theory among rural anthropologists, one too uncomfortable for most to publish, that in certain places blood remembers. Not in a poetic way, not metaphor, but literally. That trauma, madness and silence don't just pass down, they accumulate. And in her, they had all converged. She wasn't a victim anymore, not exactly. She had outlived that role. What emerged in her place was something no one knew how to name, a being shaped entirely by secrecy and repetition. She had never been taught the world, and so she never feared it. She didn't see herself as broken, she saw others as wrong. There were moments, rare, almost mythic, when she would come close to the edge of town, not into it, just near enough to be seen, standing beneath a sodium street lamp, watching through the trees. A man working at the gas station swore she watched him pump fuel for over 2 hours, didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there, arms limp at her sides, head slightly tilted like an owl. He quit that same night. Another woman said she caught the girl trying to climb into her chicken coop, not to steal a bird, but to sleep among them. She found her curled up in the straw, humming. The hens didn't run, they just sat beside her like she belonged. Even animals didn't question her anymore. Once, a game warden tracked a pack of coyotes up into the ridge, only to find them lying in a ring around her, like sentries. She didn't command them, she didn't even move, but they didn't touch her. It was as if something in her blood carried more than deformity, something ancient, something that the forest, and maybe even nature itself, remembered. When the state finally decided to survey the area for development, they sent 2 men with maps and clipboards. Neither one made it up the mountain. One slipped and shattered his leg on the old mining trail. The other turned back halfway and he refused to explain why, said only, "That place doesn't want to be measured." By then, the house had long rotted, but she was still there, somewhere in the trees, in the fog, watching, waiting, not for someone to find her, but for someone who wouldn't look away. She was last seen in the winter of 2014, at least officially. A local man, hunting raccoons near the creek bed, found strange tracks in the snow. Barefoot, human but not. The toes were long, spread too wide, as if whoever made them hadn't worn shoes in their entire life. They followed no trail, no path, just wandered, erratic, overlapping, looping in circles, as if whoever made them didn't walk to somewhere, but away from something. At the center of the tracks, he found something else. A single wooden carving, crudely made, shaped like a girl, arms out, mouth missing. He didn't take it, just backed away and went home without his kill, never hunted again. After that, she stopped appearing altogether. No more sightings, no more offerings, just an absence, one that felt heavier than her presence ever did. Some believe she died, exposure, starvation, madness, that the forest finally reclaimed her. Others say she left, moved deeper into the hollers, into places so remote even satellites blur their vision. But there are still whispers. A woman in Kentucky claimed her daughter woke up speaking a name they'd never taught her, a name that sounded like bones cracking. A gas station in Tennessee received a single dollar bill in the tip jar. On the back, scratched with a knife, were the words, "Do you see me now?" And once, just once, a photo appeared on a forgotten blog. Blurry, night vision green. A shape crouched low to the ground in a field, thin limbs, white eyes. The blogger took it down within hours, said it wasn't real, said it was a prank. But the IP was traced to a rural township just 30 miles from where she was born. If born is the right word, because in truth, she wasn't born into this world, not the way we understand it. She slipped through it. Like something old, trapped beneath generations of silence, finally found a way out. And all it took was time, and the forgetting of names. She was never registered, never baptized, never written in any census, and so she remains, in the cracks between record books, between bloodlines, between what we admit and what we bury. A girl with no name, the most inbred birth ever recorded, if it can be called a birth at all.